But if you make yourself more than just a man, if you devote yourself to an ideal, and if they can't stop you, then you become something else entirely. Which is legend, Mr. Wayne.
This video is sponsored by Ritual. Often when I've felt myself to be stuck in a rut, I've turned to cinema to inspire. At times, certain movies have even pulled me out of a sense of depression. Perhaps amongst the most inspirational figures and most meaningful cinematic trilogies in my life, and I have no doubt that this is true for many of you, is the Dark Knight trilogy, directed by our boy Christopher Nolan. There's plenty of narratives about characters who started from nothing and built up their life to something worthwhile, and that's a narrative that appeals to a lot of us. But the even more worthwhile direction comes from the fact that Bruce Wayne was actually born into wealth, and he could have stayed in it even after his parents' death. But instead, he took a hard path in processing his dark emotions, his guilt, his anger, his frustration, and he defined what he was going to be, what he was going to do outside of just his own life. In today's video, as is classic with the genre series format, which if you don't know is like a self-improvement video, but it's viewed through the lens of some cinematic story, we'll take a look at the 5 lessons we can learn from Batman. I made this video like 2 years ago when I didn't have any means of production, so you can consider this the sort of spiritual sequel. The first principle is to identify your fears. In one of my favorite interviews on the Dark Knight trilogy, the interviewer had basically said that the 3 Dark Knight trilogy movies encompass 3 different themes in a person's life. Those are fear, chaos, and pain. In Batman Begins, the theme of addressing one's fear is a big part of Bruce's journey. As a child, Bruce is deeply afraid of bats. In fact, this sort of indirectly leads to his parents' death. Conquering this fear and creating an ideal for himself is what allows Bruce to absorb his pain and work through it and do something constructive with it. A lot of what holds us back from taking on more of the things we need to do is fear. It might not even be consciously held fear, but it's something that we harbor deep within us, and it's funny how it manifests in like the way we work in the world. Sometimes we think we're doing something because we're being logical, when really we're just afraid of doing what we want to do, what's on our path. A small example of this, but one that has certainly been true for me, is that now more than ever, I'm a bit afraid to upload YouTube videos. It's partially because with the weight of an audience now, I worry about the views. If I don't upload anything, then I don't have to sort of deal with the pressure of how the video is going to perform or not perform. And it's this strange thing as a creator where if you end up spending a lot of time on a video and it doesn't do well, not only do you have to worry about getting another sponsor again and seeing if you can keep doing this, but also that sort of existential fear that can kick in as an artist where you wonder if you've been wasting your life because you put so much effort into something that ultimately, didn't get received. It's definitely a fallacy, but you end up thinking about this all the time as a creator. Now, the fear itself would be fine. Actually, the weight of my potential audience and what they might think of me is a driving force for me. My fear helps me make better videos. But that fear also often causes me to procrastinate on the process. Things like writing and filming. I mean, there's nothing stopping me from doing that, even if I don't upload. And yet, overall, sometimes this fear drives me to inaction. Back when I was hunting for jobs, I had a fear of applying for positions. Even though there's no downside to applying for a job. Ultimately, you're in the same position if you apply or don't apply, even if you don't get the job. But there's something about the fear of putting effort into something and getting rejected that can hold a lot of people back. Tim Ferriss has often said that fear setting is a hugely valuable process, even more than goal setting. It's an exercise he recommends doing at least once a quarter or even once a month, because your ability to conquer your fear is directly related to how much you can define it in the first place. He says this: if you are nervous about making the jump on something or simply putting it off out of fear of the unknown, he says to go through this writing exercise and not to think through the process of what you're writing, but rather just focus on the volume of what you're writing. 1, define your nightmare, the absolute worst thing that could happen if you did what you're considering. 2, what steps could you take to repair the damage or get things back on the upswing? 3, what are the outcomes or benefits, both temporary and permanent, or more probable scenarios? Now that you've defined your nightmare, what's the most probable or definite positive outcome if you took the action on the thing that you're fearing? What is the impact of these outcomes on a scale of 1 to 10? 4, what are you putting off out of fear? Usually what we fear doing the most is what we need to do. A phone call, a conversation, whatever that action plan is, it's the fear of the unknown outcomes that prevent us from doing what we need to do. And then this is an interesting part of the exercise. What is it potentially costing you to not act in spite of your fear? Of course, there's downside potentially to taking some risky action and failing, but what's the downside if you don't take that risk? Financially, emotionally, physically? And then number 6, after you've defined all these considerations, ask yourself, what am I waiting for? If your only reason for not doing something is like good timing or something, then maybe that means that you should be taking action anyway. We see this with Bruce Wayne in so many regards, in which he's almost afraid to confront his city and go back to it. He's afraid to assume a certain role as, you know, the Dark Knight of Gotham. And in fact, it's his ability to embody his fear that helps him do his life's work. Number 2, fight chaos by creating a schedule. Can you tell I'm sort of trying to structure this based off of the 3 themes of the movies? Fear, chaos, and pain. Now I know I'm reaching a little bit with this one, but you can fight chaos by making a schedule. We're all fighting chaos. It's just that our guy Bruce is fighting against the agent of chaos, and we're fighting against being like shitty. But in this last week, I started calendar blocking my days very aggressively. In fact, I made a video about it that you can check out. And I was blown away by how much of a positive experience it was. So much so that I've actually kept up the practice of calendar blocking my days and trying to stick to that schedule I'd set. As a result, my energy levels, confidence, the amount of time I spend working has increased, but also the amount of time I've been spending in meaningful leisure. And that's because even in my leisure time, I would like to spend leisure well. I would like to get fulfillment out of my leisure, ideally. And when I'm not intentional about how I'm going to spend my downtime, inevitably I just end up scrolling my phone, which there's no fulfillment in that. Instead, I wish I would have spent that time like watching movies that actually excite me, that might be acclaimed, that gives me something to chew on, because when I watch a great movie, I feel amazing. I feel inspired to go out there again. And when I'm just scrolling my phone, I'm completely uninspired. And since I've been scheduling, the amount I've been able to get done has been significantly more. While my leisure time has been more meaningful than ever, it's been feeling absolutely fantastic, and I'm hoping I can keep this up, because it's been the first time in perhaps 2 years that I don't feel completely overwhelmed by the amount of stuff I have to get done. So, creating a schedule for yourself might be worth doing. This video is sponsored by Ritual. Ritual has become a part of my habit stacking routine that makes me feel good, and it's a supplement I take with my protein shake after my workouts. It's vegan-friendly, sugar-free, non-GMO, gluten-free, and allergen-free. Fill the gaps in your diet with Essential for Men. It's a small step that helps support a healthy foundation for your body. The no-nausea delayed-release capsule design is gentle on an empty stomach, and there's a mint tab in every bottle to keep your vitamins smelling fresh. Ritual is vegan-friendly, sugar-free, non-GMO, gluten-free, and allergen-free. Ritual searched the globe for the best suppliers from around the world and is transparent about where they source their ingredients. Ritual are offering 10% off of your first 3 months by going to my link in the description box and using my code at checkout. It's sponsors like Ritual that allow us to make high effort videos, so thank you Ritual for sponsoring this video and making videos like that David Fincher parody possible. Number 3, level up your standards with fitness. I'm a bit of a hypocrite with this declaration because I'm currently in like not that fit of a state, but you can bet I'm working super hard to overcome this. I'm now going for an hour of exercise on something every day, and at least at the time of this filming, I haven't missed that for 10 days. Obviously, one of the most defining, well-established attributes of Bruce Wayne is the fact that he's an incredible specimen. An arousing specimen. Almost comically so. In the comic books, he's well versed with all kinds of martial arts, gymnastics, he's a brawler, he can lift heavy, he runs fast, he eats an immaculate diet, he actually doesn't drink any alcohol, which I think is very cool. Every time he's at one of those cocktail parties, he's actually drinking apple cider and pretending it's champagne. In my own efforts to up my personal fitness, I've decided to take up running, and running with the winter in mind. While working out in the cold can be a miserable affair, it also lends itself to a feeling of being refreshed and feeling like a badass, which cannot be undervalued. I came across this image from a book on Batman some time ago, and the main takeaway here is that you want depth and variety in your training. Some days it's kettlebells, some days it's just going for a run, yoga, heavy squats, the punching bag, monkey bars. Don't get stuck in a routine, and don't take your training lightly. A really cool quote that I came across recently is from Jason Statham. He says, "Your body is like a piece of dynamite. You can tap it with a pencil all day, but you'll never make it explode. You hit it once with a hammer, bang. Get serious. Do 40 hard minutes, not an hour and a half of nonsense." Principle number 4, meditation and cold water immersion. Take on the focus and detachment of a ninja. In his 10 years of traveling the world, seeking training in all fields in preparation to his mission of eventually becoming the Batman, Bruce Wayne learned with the ninjas, the League of Shadows. And an integral part of his training is meditation. You see this in some shots in the comic books, in the animated series, and even in Nolan's movies. Batman is a person who practices focus. And not just Batman, even the villains in the series practice focus. One of the coolest shots that I've seen from the comics is Bane in prison, meditating for hours at a time. He's the only person who could really compete with Batman physically, and yet he's a meditator. From what I dug up in the comics, Batman practiced a type of meditation from the Himalayan mountains, Zazen, sitting meditation, in which you sit comfortably, bring your mind to the present, focus on something like your breath, and just keep observing what happens in your body. With meditation, you shut off your autopilot, you become more aware of what's happening inside your mind and body. This doesn't sound like a big deal, but it can be life-altering. A stronger awareness via a strengthened prefrontal cortex through meditation helps you make better decisions in life, helps you become a ninja. Currently, I'm working on a video, it's a couple weeks out, on meditating an hour every day for 30 days. So granted, right now I'm only on day 4 of that challenge, but even in 4 days, I've noticed some great benefits. My creativity is increased, it's easier for me to script out new ideas, and I also feel less anxious and more energetic. Alongside this, even in the terrain of ninja focus, is the idea of exposing yourself to the cold. In the comics, we often see Batman like meditating underneath a waterfall, or of course that iconic scene in Batman Begins where Ducard and Bruce Wayne are training on like an icy lake, and Ducard is telling Bruce Wayne to not only always mind his surroundings, but rather consider the fact that the training is nothing. The will is everything. The will to act. Probably one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema. Which brings me to the final message, really the heart of the whole trilogy, which is make your life's work in getting back up again. This one's a little more of a personal take, but I still think it's very valuable. Throughout my own life, and I'm sure in yours as well, there have been long periods where I didn't like myself. I didn't like my situation in life. And even though I had created an ideal for myself, just like how Bruce had, I somehow hadn't found a way to devote myself to it. In the stories, Bruce has repeatedly found himself in this pit, this well, at times rising up to be his ideal, and then being ravaged by his own fear, his guilt, his anger at his parents' death, or even the chaos and the violence that's entered his city, or the pain of being brought back into physical deterioration by an enemy who's actually stronger than him. And his real superpower through all of these times is the fact that he keeps getting back up again. At the end of the day, we don't know how long we can hold on to the good times before the next storm comes. Life is full of storms, as Edmond Dantes says in The Count of Monte Cristo. Our true measure then is our ability to respond to that storm. And the same goes with Alfred's words to Bruce throughout his life. Why do we fall? So we may learn to pick ourselves up. It's always been a powerful reminder to me. I actually got a poster that has the script of those very words, and I have it framed above the editing bay. And ultimately, I think that's the deepest reason why we love Bruce Wayne, why we love the Batman series. If you're new to this channel, my name is Nikhil. This channel is a combination between comedy sketches and more genuine videos like this one. If that appeals to you, consider subscribing. And for those of us willing to identify our fears, fight chaos with the schedule, level up our fitness, meditate, and keep getting back up, to us I say, greatness is coming. Cheers.